Since January, something has been running on your Windows 11 machine that you never agreed to, never enabled, and almost certainly never heard of. It's not buried in an obscure update log. It's not a third-party app. It's built directly into the operating system, and it's been quietly active on hundreds of millions of computers for months. Microsoft calls it a feature. Security researchers call it a liability. And once you understand exactly what it does, you're going to want to turn it off. Right now, let me show you exactly what's happening. Let's get specific, because vague warnings don't protect you. Exact details do. What we're talking about is a telemetry and diagnostic data collection framework that was quietly expanded in a Windows 11 update that began rolling out in late January of this year. Most people didn't notice it because it didn't arrive with a dramatic announcement. It arrived the way Microsoft prefers, silently in the background during a routine cumulative update. The feature in question involves what's known as the Connected User Experiences and Telemetry Service, also called DiagTrack, combined with a newer companion layer that feeds behavioral data to Microsoft's cloud infrastructure under the guise of system optimization. Here's what that actually means in plain language. Your machine is regularly packaging up information about how you use your computer, which applications you open, how long you use them, what you type into the Windows search bar, which websites you visit through Edge, your device's hardware identifiers, your network connection details, and in some configurations, content from the clipboard. This data gets transmitted to Microsoft's servers on a rolling schedule. You weren't asked, you weren't warned. The update just showed up and started doing it. If you're skeptical, stay with me, because this isn't speculation. Kevin Beaumont, a well-known independent security researcher who previously worked at Microsoft, flagged this expanded data pipeline in a detailed post in February, noting that the scope of what DiagTrack now collects under the enhanced and full telemetry tiers had widened compared to what the documentation described. He specifically called out discrepancies between what Microsoft's privacy documentation states and what network traffic analysis actually shows being transmitted. That kind of gap between stated policy and observed behavior is worth paying attention to. The Electronic Frontier Foundation, one of the most credible digital rights organizations operating today, has been tracking Windows telemetry expansion for years. And their most recent analysis noted that Windows 11's data collection footprint is significantly larger than Windows 10's was at the same point in its life cycle. Independent network monitoring researchers using tools like Wireshark have confirmed that even on the basic or required telemetry setting, the lowest available to consumer users, data transmissions to Microsoft endpoints happen dozens of times per day. Dozens. On the lowest setting. Think about what that means for you. Every time you open your banking app, that's logged. Every search you type into the Start menu, and remember, that search bar is connected to Bing by default. That's transmitted. The documents you've been working on, the names of the files you've opened, the applications you were running at 2 a.m. when you thought no one was watching, it builds a behavioral fingerprint of your computing life. And here's what should bother you most. You have no way to see exactly what's in each package before it leaves your machine. But here's what really bothers me about this. This wasn't an accident, a bug, or a security oversight. This was a business decision, a carefully engineered one. Microsoft has spent the last 3 years transforming Windows from a product you buy into a platform they monetize continuously. The shift is deliberate, and it has a name inside the industry, the data economy model. Microsoft's commercial cloud and advertising revenue has been growing, and the behavioral data that Windows collects from its billion-plus users is part of what feeds that machine. When Microsoft introduced the new AI features in Windows 11, Copilot, the AI-powered search, the predictive suggestions, they needed training data, enormous amounts of it. Real-world behavioral data from actual users doing actual work is enormously valuable for training these systems. Your habits, your workflows, your language patterns, this is the raw material. The telemetry service is partly a pipeline that feeds that process. Microsoft told investors in their Q2 2024 earnings call that AI integration across their consumer products was a core revenue strategy. They weren't lying. They just didn't explain to you specifically what role your machine was playing in it. There's a metaphor I keep coming back to. Imagine you hired a contractor to renovate your house, and while they were there, they installed a camera in every room. Not a security camera you control, their camera transmitting to their servers, logging what you do in your own home. You find out about it 3 months later, buried in the fine print of the renovation contract. And when you complain, they say, it's for your benefit. We're using the footage to improve our services. That's the arrangement. And if that makes your stomach turn a little, it should. Because the house is your computer, and you're paying for the privilege of being observed. When I dug into this more deeply, running my own traffic analysis on a clean Windows 11 install, the volume of outbound connections was jarring. Within 30 minutes of initial setup, before I had installed a single third-party application, I counted connections to over a dozen Microsoft domains. Some were expected, others were feeding the telemetry pipeline. And this was on a machine with telemetry nominally set to the lowest option. The system wasn't lying, technically. It was transmitting required diagnostic data, but required. By whom, and for whose benefit, is a question Microsoft would prefer you not ask too loudly. If you felt for a while that something was off, that your computer was behaving more like a service you subscribe to than a tool you own, you were right. And now let's actually fix it. Enough context, let's talk about what you can actually do right now on the machine sitting in front of you. There are several layers here, and I'm going to walk you through each one clearly. Some of these are simple settings, changes. One involves a lightweight tool. All of them are legitimate, documented methods. No hacking, no registry gambling, no voiding warranties. And I'll be honest about what each one does and doesn't accomplish, because I'd rather give you an accurate picture than an oversimplified promise. Start with the core telemetry setting. Press the Windows key, open Settings, then navigate to Privacy and Security. Scroll down and click on Diagnostics and Feedback. The first thing you'll see is a toggle labeled Diagnostic Data. Make sure this is set to Required Diagnostic Data only. Not enhanced, not full. If it's currently on the higher setting, flip it now. This is the baseline. It limits the breadth of behavioral data Microsoft can collect, though, and I want to be clear about this, it does not eliminate data transmission entirely. Required still means Microsoft required, which still means some data flows, but significantly less. Still, in that same diagnostics and feedback panel, look for the option called Improve Inking and Typing. Turn that off. This feature samples what you type and sends it to Microsoft to improve handwriting and text recognition models. Unless you're using a Surface with a stylus and actively want that feature, there's no reason to leave it on. Below that, you'll find tailored experiences. Turn that off as well. This is Microsoft's language for using your diagnostic data to serve you personalized ads and feature suggestions. In other words, using what they have collected to market back to you inside your own operating system. Off. Now go back to the Privacy and Security section and click Activity History. You'll see options related to Windows Activity History, which is the system that logs your recent app usage, files, and browsing activity and syncs it across your Microsoft account. Toggle off Store My Activity History on this device. If you're signed in with a Microsoft account and see Send My Activity History to Microsoft, make sure that's off too. Activity History feeds directly into the timeline feature and into Copilot's contextual awareness, meaning it's one of the more personal data stores on the machine. Next, navigate to Privacy and Security, then to Search Permissions. Here you'll find settings controlling what Windows Search collects and where it sends queries. Under Cloud Content Search, you'll see toggles for Microsoft account and work or school account. Turn both off. This stops your local search bar from querying Bing and transmitting what you type. Below that, under Search History on this device, clear your existing history and toggle the collection off. These steps alone significantly reduce the data fingerprint that Windows sends to Microsoft just from ordinary daily use. Now for the service layer. This is slightly more advanced, but still completely safe if you follow the steps exactly. MSC and hit Enter. This opens the Windows Services panel. Scroll down until you find Connected User Experiences and Telemetry. This is the DiagTrack service, the core engine behind most of what we've been discussing. Right-click it, select Properties, and in the Startup Type dropdown, change it from Automatic to Disabled. Then click Stop to halt it immediately. Click OK. This service will no longer start with Windows. One important note here. There's a separate service called Windows Error Reporting Service in the same list. Disabling. DiagTrack is widely considered safe for home users. Disabling error. Reporting is generally fine too, but it does mean that if Windows crashes, it won't automatically generate diagnostic reports, which can occasionally make it harder to troubleshoot issues. My recommendation, disable DiagTrack. Leave error reporting on unless you have a specific reason to turn it off. Precision matters here. The final layer, and this is optional but effective, is using a tool called O&O Shutup 10++. It's free, it's from a legitimate German software company called O&O Software. It requires no installation, and it's been reviewed positively by security researchers and publications, including Bleeping Computer and How To Geek. What it does is give you a comprehensive visual dashboard of every privacy-related setting in Windows 11, dozens of them, and lets you toggle them systematically. When you open it, use the Actions menu and select Apply Only Recommended Settings. This will configure the most impactful privacy adjustments without touching anything that could destabilize your system. Before you go further, a few honest caveats. If you work in an enterprise or corporate environment, your IT department may require certain telemetry settings to remain active for compliance, remote management, and security monitoring purposes. Do not change diag-track settings on a work machine without clearing it with your IT team first. Additionally, some of these changes, particularly disabling activity history, may affect Copilot's ability to surface contextual suggestions and Windows timeline functionality. If you rely on those features, weigh the trade-off consciously. This is about privacy, not about disabling Windows Defender, Smart Screen, or your firewall. Those should stay on, full stop, and nothing we've covered here touches them. Total time to implement all of this, roughly 20 minutes. Cost, $0. And the result is a Windows 11 machine that still runs everything you need, still gets security. Updates, but is no longer feeding a continuous stream of behavioral data to Microsoft's servers every few hours. Look, I want to be straight with you before you close this tab. This isn't really about one setting, or one January update, or one company's telemetry service. It's about something bigger, a quiet, incremental shift in the relationship between you and your computer. The device used to be yours unambiguously. You bought it, you ran it, it did what you told it to do. Over the last decade, that relationship has been renegotiated, almost entirely on the manufacturer's terms, almost entirely without your explicit input, until we've arrived at the situation we're in now, where a machine you paid for is routinely packaging up data about your habits and sending it somewhere you can't inspect. That's not paranoia. That's the documented reality. And the reason it matters is not just that Microsoft specifically has this data, it's that these practices normalize the idea that the device owner isn't actually in control of what their device does. Once that becomes the default expectation, rolling it back becomes harder with every generation of hardware and software. You're not a technophobe for caring about this. You're not a conspiracy theorist for wanting to understand what your machine is doing in the background. You're acting like someone who takes their own digital life seriously. And that's entirely reasonable. The changes you just made aren't radical. They're sensible. They're the kind of thing that shouldn't have required a YouTube video in the first place, but here we are. There are a lot of people making these choices right now, quietly reclaiming control of their machines, learning what's actually running on them, deciding what they're willing to accept. You're part of that group now. And you didn't have to abandon Windows, switch platforms, or sacrifice anything significant to get here. You just had to know where to look. Do this today. Not tomorrow, not the next time you remember. Today, before the next update rolls out and the landscape shifts again. And if this gave you something useful, subscribe, because this is what I cover. Not the press releases, not the feature announcements, the stuff underneath.